Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about negotiations. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how important is one's negotiation skills when it comes to software design? Well, I would say it's pretty important. The pretty much every day you're going to have different like discussions and different ideas of what constitutes a good solution, a bad solution, should we try this tool, should we try that tool, etc., etc. Like there are all these nuances to your daily job where in the code reviews and so forth when you provide feedback, like it's a daily thing basically, and so it's important that you know how to play nice with all the other software developers. And it's one of the quickest ways for you to create a lot of like friction in your teams is when you have a lot of strong opinions, you don't negotiate or communicate well with the others. And usually, depending on situation, that might lead to resentment, but it might also lead to like fear among people and so forth. And that tension is it's very dangerous to have that tension, and that's why the negotiation skills and personal maturity is a pretty gosh darn important part, I would say, to have a stable team at the very least, because you basically need a sustainable way to make the best quote unquote decision for every situation without making people feel as if they are not being heard or they're getting trampled or so forth and so forth. And this is the ideal state basically. I mean, if we could do this at scale, we might even solve this whole like world peace thing, but it is notoriously difficult to get to a point where you both agree on, or like everybody agrees on, the different options that you have available, and they all find one of them acceptable, like it's a good strong solution, and it is the solution that is most informed and like objectively the one that you should probably be going with, that wins, and not due to someone's ability to argue or someone's charisma or seniority within the team, etc., etc. And to have that consistently happening without anybody feeling as if they're going to opt out of the process, or that this is pointless, or like that there has to be a genuine consensus, right? And that is it requires a lot from you in order to be able to do that. It's a skill that let's just say that it's the skill that you're going to hone the most likely. I'm not going to go as far as to say that it's all the things that we talk about when we talk about soft skills, but it is like 50%, I would say, of what we mean when we say soft skills in IT. Your ability to formulate structured arguments and reasonings behind why you feel a certain way or why you think a certain way, and come with suggestions and so forth in a way that fulfills all those criteria, is the number one thing in software development when it comes to soft skills. It's if you only learn one thing, that is the one thing that you should focus on. And it requires, as I said, it requires a fairly personal it's a personal maturity thing. It is it for some people, especially the ones who have a hot temper, a lot of opinions and so forth, this might be very difficult, but it is critical that this gets solved, because anything else is usually not a good thing. There's very few there's not really a good as like a situation where it's good for you to lock heads with lock horns with like your coworkers or anything like that. And it's difficult because, unfortunately for you, the people that are around you are going to be affected by you getting your way. So even if you feel like you're winning by like forcing people, or like you getting them to just quote unquote do what you feel like they should be doing, that usually comes at a cost. And if you're lucky, you're dealing with people who can deal with that, but if you're unlucky, it's going to come back and blow up in your face, either through something that affects you directly, And that's probably the case that most people who behave like this feel something towards, because usually they're very egocentric, like they don't really care about what's happening to the company. They care about themselves, which is the reason why they behave this way usually, which is the tragic part in the whole thing, which I've said to many of my like I've told my bosses about that. When you have an individual like that, you have to fire them immediately, regardless of how good they are, or shuffle them out, because the problem is that what's important to them is not what's good for the company. What's important to them is that they get what they feel that they want. And if you're lucky, they're really, really good, and that's going to align really well with what the company needs. If you're unlucky, you have a person who basically cripples your entire organization, but can do so without being stopped, because either no one has none of the other people around them will stand up to them, or they have so much influence that people will believe that this is the way things should be working. And guys, I've been in situations with people where they have grinded the company down to a fucking snail's pace, and no one ever questions them. And the reason why they're not questioning them is because they're aggressive, usually highly skilled, or like good, like in terms of like they have technical knowledge and so forth, and they have communication skills. Like they know how to behave in such a way that they basically do all these sorts of things, right? And although most people behind their back tell them that this is bullshit, etc., etc., and like they will confine us, say, no, this was very stupid, etc., etc., nobody's going to call them on it, because as of like the way most people behave in a professional environment, you try to accommodate and so forth, and usually you shy away from these sorts of like overt arguments due to a number of factors. But that negotiation part there, like that is the thing that's going to help you create an environment where like difference of opinions are possible. And if you do it correctly, you're more likely to arrive at a good decision and make fewer mistakes than if you have someone who sort of like just tries to force their will upon everyone and everything. I'm not saying that everything should always be a discussion, but you should default into understanding whether or not there's a valid point to whatever anybody else is saying, and in order for you to get to a point where people will actually tell you what they really think, which is the big challenge for a lot of companies, because most employees, as I said, they might not want to say anything. They're not going to say. It doesn't matter. You can put the suggestion box and it might be empty all the time. And the reason is very simple, because there's no incentive for them to do anything, because the only thing that's going to change, most likely, well, apart from if they really care about, if the problem is so severe that they really suffer for it, most of them are going to prioritize the security of being quiet and blending into the mix and just collecting a paycheck, and all that does is that it hurts your company. So what I want you to take away from this is that it is pretty damn important for software engineers to learn how to negotiate and structure arguments and so forth when they're working, because it's going to be a daily thing for you, basically. Every code review is a discussion. Every code review is up for like opinions of how to do things and so forth. And the quicker you can get your temper under control and understand how to explain your reasoning behind decisions that you're making and so forth, and make people feel as if you're hearing them and so forth, and actually having a conversation between people, as opposed to the other things that you could be doing, the quicker you're going to figure out that this leads to a more stable and wholesome team composition. And it's probably going to end with you, well, it's not going to be perfect. I mean, you're going to have to make some concessions here and there, because sometimes people feel very strongly, even though they might quote unquote be wrong about something. But the net benefit is higher than if you create an environment where it's very hostile, which is the alternative to negotiation. Have a great day.